Thanks for joining us tonight. Welcome everyone tonight for another edition of our Mystery School. Tonight's topic is on spontaneous evolution, and I'm your host, Jacob Cox. Thanks for being here. So tonight, I really wanted to talk about a topic that I haven't really talked about too much on any kind of videos that I've done, but I do think is very important, and a topic that hopefully should really honestly get us all thinking and wondering, what are the infinite possibilities of our consciousness, who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. So tonight's talk, spontaneous evolution, I think is a big one. I've hinted at it in a couple videos here and there, but I'm excited to bring you this new topic, something I've been really working on for probably a decade. So let's get started. So tonight's topic is spontaneous evolution. And, this is a picture of Bruce Lipton's book about spontaneous evolution. I think it's pretty cool overall. Great for a picture to start out with. But basically the metamorphosis of humanity that, so we've been told the Darwin way of thinking is that things over millions of years slowly turn into other things. But I don't think that's how it goes. I really honestly believe that spontaneous evolution seems to be what's happening here. When you look at hominids or different animals like a fish from a shellfish, there are no other fossil records, there are no other skeletons, or no other things that are found from the shellfish to the fish. But that's what we should be told, is that that's going to evolve into that. They're going to evolve into more complex creatures. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing shellfish, we're seeing fish, we're seeing reptiles, we're seeing different things. We're not seeing the in-between. How did they get to be from the reptile to a mammal? How do they go from one kind of hominid, like a Neanderthal or Paleolithic man or Cro-Magnon man? How did we all of a sudden get those things to Homo sapiens? There's no in between. And I think when we look at things like the butterfly and the metamorphosis, these things are changing, and they're changing quickly. They're going from one, the caterpillar to the butterfly, and changing almost like species. And so this model that we've seen, where the monkey to the semi-upright to an upright and less hair, and just evolving slowly, that's not the way I think it's going. I do think that that we do evolve, and evolution means to roll out, and the universe is rolling things out, and we are changing. We adapt quickly to our environment. I love this quote: "Man is in the process of changing to forms of life that are not of this world." And I do believe that. I do believe that we are morphing. We are spontaneously evolving into different things. But I think these changes are quick and abrupt, to better suit our environment, not things that happen over millions of years. So as like I said, we look at this thing, and it's just a picture that we're shown over and over and over again, kind of like a lot of things that we hear in the news or politics. And it's almost like if we say it enough, if we tell you guys this thing enough, then eventually we have to believe it, and we're going to believe it. And a lot of us do, even though there really isn't any evidence for it. And that's why they're always looking for the missing link, right? There's some missing link out there that's going to prove this theory, but there isn't. And I don't think we're ever going to find any kind of link, because we'd have to find a ton. We have to find a ton of evidence that shows how this thing evolved slowly over millions of years into something else. And that's just not going to happen. Never has, never will. There's always been many different kinds of hominids. Like I said before, Cro-Magnon man, Paleolithic man, Neanderthals, Homo sapiens. And the thing about that is they weren't just one and then the other. These hominids have existed at the same time and still exist at the same time as Homo sapiens. We are not the only upright walking hominid on this planet at this point. It's just not the truth. The truth is that there are other hominids, Neanderthals, and not that they're less evolved than we are. I think after this presentation, you'll come to realize that some of these species and hominids are actually more intelligent, more evolved than we are. Just because we have tall buildings, cars, we think we're more civilized. But were the Native Americans less civilized than we are because they lived in teepees and followed the land, and we have cars and we have tall buildings? I don't think so. I think they knew more about the universe, about Mother Earth, and about living in harmony with the planet than we do today. So I want to get right into it. And the biggest thing that I think really suggests that a spontaneous evolution is among us is the elongated skulls that we find. Now, these are from the Paracas skulls in Ica, Peru. I've actually stood in front of these skulls myself in the museum in Ica in Peru. I can tell you this, they have pictures next to these skulls of children being binded, which means they basically put a flat board on the back. They take things and they bind their heads to stretch out their skull. And when you do this, they're not adding any capacity to the brain. They're just simply stretching out the skulls and just disforming the brain. These skulls are not like that. They're, I believe, 25% larger in capacity. No matter how you bind a skull, you cannot increase the brain capacity. And so that's something to know. They can put all the pictures there. They can make it so. They can tell you all day. But if it is just binding, how come there's a cop standing at the door and won't let you take a picture of the skulls while you're there? You can take a picture of everything else in the entire museum. Once you get into this little room, there's cameras everywhere. There's a cop outside with a gun, and you can't even take a picture of these skulls, but they're just binded. It just doesn't fly. These are incredible. They are, I believe, a species that is probably far beyond our intelligence. They understand things collectively that our species as Homo sapiens probably doesn't understand. And I do believe probably many of these are possibly aliens from other planets. Definitely, again, with the binding, we have those ridges in our head. So when you're born, you have to go through the canal. Your brain your skull has to basically break, so it narrows out. And then when you come out, and obviously there's many, many different plates that fuse back together, basically harden back up and create your skull. So we all have that little crack down the middle of our skull. These skulls don't have that. They have completely different ridges in the skull, which I think is really important to know. Like, there's no way that you could just bind that and make that different. Certainly to know that these are probably different species. But again, I want to really stress, it's because these may be, beings from the planet, doesn't mean that our people, our Homo sapiens species, can't get there. Evolution just doesn't stop with opposable thumbs and now we're it because we got our iPhones and, cars and buildings. And these are authentic skulls. I mean, this one still has hair all over it, which is pretty incredible that, something, estimated as old as these things are, still has hair on it. So, they're very unique. They're very incredible. I think this one is one of the red hair, which we hear a lot about the red hair giants in the past and even today that they're still spotted. And so again, the binding that's done and why are, let's take that into question real quick. Why would humans want to go to the trouble of binding their children's heads to look like this? To me, the first thing that I think of is imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? When you see somebody doing something that maybe looks like magic to you, maybe looks incredible to you, you want to imitate those kind of people. And so if these people physically look different, you're going to want to look like them. You're going to be like them. You know what I mean? All the commercials back in the day, want to be like Mike. You want to be like the celebrity. You want to be like the cool person. And certainly anybody who has an understanding of the way the universe works and technologies and what seemingly could be magic to other people, certainly other people would want to imitate them and look like them. But you cannot fake these ridges, the differences, and the capacity. So, we should not be so quick to think that every single one of these skulls is alien. Now, certainly we definitely see lots of different types of aliens and hear about different interactions and abductions and things with aliens and how a lot of them do have these enlarged skulls and elongated skulls. And it just makes sense. I mean, it's even in our culture and people who, in movies and cartoons that are more intelligent have these bigger heads. And it's just like all there in the underlying ether. It's just, not even hidden. It's just in plain sight everywhere. That there have always been, people with elongated skulls. And there are still today people who are descendants of these people. I've seen many pictures of royalty of people who definitely still in paintings and those who walk among us today who still have a bit of an elongated skull. So we see this everywhere, all over the world, Mayan. We see this in almost every culture and almost every continent. And not always do they have this really, conformed, elongated skull. Sometimes we just see this little bun of enlightenment up here on the Buddha. And, we have to think about that. Why is there on every Buddha that you see almost, you literally have this little bun right here? What does that signify? What are people trying to tell us? This is Christian, this whole family. The women, the men, all of them have the kids. They have these look like hats almost, right? But what's underneath the hats? What's hiding under there? And why do they have to hide their heads because of this? It's really, fascinating to even think about that these people walked among us at some point just openly. And, it was almost like a memory that we've lost it. We've kind of forgotten. But in so many enlightened beings, and so many cultures, and so many pictures, and so many statues, you have this like bun of enlightenment. And we talk about it, we see it a lot. We've seen a lot of different, cultures and societies and things. Certainly it's not just conducive to men. There are definitely many statues of women, paintings, gods and goddesses. But this bun, I am completely convinced at this point, this is not a hairstyle that every Buddha has. This is something that I believe they're trying to convey that was seen. It's something that we should take a step in and look at it and say, maybe there's a little bit more to this than just a pointy hat or a bun on their head. Many cultures talk about crowns of life, crowns of royalty that can't be taken away. And what's under these hats? Why are these gods and goddesses wearing these really kind of pointy hats? And, are they covering up this, maybe this is the crown of life, Confucius was literally said to have a misshapen head that looked like a crown on his head. And so almost every statue, almost every painting that you can find, you really find this kind of weird crown type of thing on top of his head. And even, these statues and stuff with even more pointy points on their head, which looks like, not necessarily a hat that he's wearing. It seems to be something else. And even again, these guys over here on this left-hand side of this picture are literally wearing what seems to be, again, maybe imitation is the highest form of flattery. They're imitating what they saw. Maybe they saw a guy who literally had a head like this. And again, these guys are sitting around the Buddha, and the Buddha has the bun of enlightenment on top. I've studied this and I've seen it in thousands and thousands of pictures. And eventually one day when I looked at what we call magicians and saw that pointy hat on top of its head, and I was thinking, wow, that is something that could honestly possibly be the reason why he could be wearing this is to cover up that cone-shaped head that he has. What if this is a person, not someone just from another planet who has evolved and their species has evolved to have elongated heads, but what if these enlightened beings in our past, Krishna, Allah, Buddha, Christ, literally had elongated skulls because they went through some kind of metamorphic process, some kind of spontaneous evolution in their lifetime, and was able to pop out that soft spot of your head. What's that, the part of the head up here called? The crown. The crown of our heads where the baby soft spot is. And what if we were to be like little children again, to enter the kingdom of heaven, as Christ said? What if we were to have that innocence and that? Would we be able to have that soft spot again? Would we be able to, just blossom our gray matter until there was some kind of process of enlightenment where that popped out, the gray matter into a large, crown type bun or some kind of elongation to the skull. Certainly the pointy hat on magicians is totally a icon for that, for those people, for the magi and the magicians, that they're all wearing these pointy hats. And to me, it's like a symbol. Symbols don't just come from nowhere. They have reasons and meanings why they're there. And then to bring it full circle, to come back into the last 100 years or so, when they've taken that pointy hat and put it on the kid who's the bad kid in class and called him a dunce and turned what we have, seen throughout history and cultures and gods and goddesses and kings and queens, now turn it into something that's bad. That's something not to talk about, something that you're a bad person, you're wearing the dunce hat, go sit in the corner, and trying to affiliate this now with something that's negative. I don't buy it. I definitely think, it's the same reason why, what happened to witches? What happened to wizards? What happened to magicians? They died at the stake. They were burned. They were killed. So they wanted to ostracize them and completely just remove them from society. And anybody who was even close to it, even people who didn't even do those things, were burned at the stake and killed. So it's just probably a way for people who don't want us to find this information to see those things, to not want to indulge in them. Don't indulge in magic and don't be a part of that world. So put this dunce head on you. And so, forget about, fitting into the crowd. You're now part of that, wizards or witches or somebody that's ostracized from society. So, Nefertiti, Akhenaten, again, they're not wearing the magician head, but they are wearing very, elongated hats. Their children all have weird bodies, and they all have elongated skulls as well. Some look like they have hats on, some look like they don't, but they all look like they have elongated skulls. And obviously, again, Nefertiti had this incredibly big hat that she wore. And why is she wearing that big hat? Because she's got a big head that goes under it. She's got an elongated skull that she, for some reason, in the past, I feel like they probably had to hide it. Looking that different, having a skull like that, doing things that people thought were black magic or evil, that you were connected to the devil. That's why they burned people at the stake. That's why they killed magicians. That's why they killed people who brought people back from the dead, who did miracles. That's not something you're supposed to do. That's something God's supposed to do. And none of us are God. At least that was the thought. And that's what they were told. Akhenaten, he's wearing a humongous hat. And this dude, just in general, looks like a weird guy. The Egyptians, obviously, when they did portraits and statues of people, they made them look really handsome and good looking, really cut. And Akhenaten was just really weird belt, had a big belly and all these other things, and just looked completely different from everybody from the time, and obviously changed everything in his way of thinking and doing things. But certainly, again, to the point, he had this big hat on, and even this one definitely looks more like a magician hat that they're wearing. But certainly, I believe he had an elongated skull too. Even King Tut, who was found once he was, brought out of the tomb and everything, and they, made a, composite of basically of what they thought he would look like. And this is it. I mean, there's no doubt he has a little bit more skull than a normal person would have, a little bit extra bun, a little bit more crown. And so, he's just a descendant from someone who probably had more. And, as time goes past and generations go by, probably a little bit less noticeable. But I've definitely seen paintings and stuff, people who are royalty, not real kings and queens, I believe, people who wear gold crowns now, but the real crown of life that we're looking for, a real king wears a crown on his head. And so I want to bring us straight to the King of Kings, right? Jesus Christ himself. This is not something that is ever pictured with Jesus. You don't ever see this elongated skull of him. It's true. But you would have to think, if this is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, if this is, one of our last big enlightenment, Homo sapiens, to get there, that he probably had one. And my guess is that he actually probably did. And just like many other informations, and just like a lot of information out there, I think a lot of things are suppressed, and they'll do anything to suppress certain things. But let me read to you a story, or at least a quote in Matthew that Jesus said. He said, "Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit to your stature?" So literally he's saying, who out of all of you, if you think, taking thought, by thinking, you can add 1 cubit, that's a measurement, to your stature. So he's literally saying, thinking can make you taller. And where would you would your legs get longer? Would your stomach, your abdomen get longer? I mean, if you really think about that, if that's a true story, where would you get a little taller at? If you're thinking, you're using your brain, and you could literally be taller. I honestly think he's referring to this crown of life. Now, the crown and the crown of righteousness, and there are many crowns talked about in the Bible, stuff that you had to do and have incredible faith for, that you would be given these crowns. These are the crowns I really believe that we should be working for, not the crowns of gold that, people who are said to be royal now have. But here's something that may blow your mind. If it doesn't blow your mind, maybe you're in the wrong mystery school, because this right here, upon looking at this and just dwelling on this picture for a long time, made me think incredible things. And now this would be a Jewish boy, and he's wearing his yarmulke on the back of his head, right? What does that look like to you? It looks like a bun that's, really honestly, if you were to make that into a silhouette, it would look like a human with an elongated skull, right? And this is supposed to symbolize humility. And I could only imagine that you have to be wondering, why would you put this on your head to symbolize humility? What is it? What is this a symbol for? This is the symbol for the fact that Christ had a crown of righteousness on his head that was an elongated skull that he was able to manifest for himself. And other people looked upon him, wanted to be like him, and put something on their head to imitate something that he had, that you yourself can grow. You yourself can add that cubit to your stature by adding thought. But we don't even do it because we don't even think it's possible. We don't even know that that's even a thing. Yet we wear these symbols and stuff on our head, and we don't even know why. And so I think of this and I look at it and I'm like, wow, that is so close to that King Tut picture to me, where it's just a little bit extra added on to his head. It's not even something that most people would probably notice unless you have those really long ones. But just for, I don't know, maybe just the initial stage of enlightenment. Maybe the head just becomes a little bit bigger. Maybe these crowns just become a little bit bigger. And then, evolution is something that does roll out, and they, heads do get bigger for people who do add more thought. But again, to me, what we think of today when we say kings and queens and princes and princesses, these are people who are wearing crowns of gold. And I don't think that any crown or any king or queen that I'm looking for would wear something like that. Look at this guy. This guy's got this, the same, it's very similar, but it is funny that most of the crowns that when you think of are gold. But they also have these kind of crowns as well. And they symbolize basically the same thing, kings, royalty. And it is funny that they're gold. And I think the reason why they're gold is when you see real kings and queens, when you see pictures of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ, when you see their halos, they're typically gold. And these are parts of, coming from their third eye, their crowns of life. They go along with people who have crowns on top of their heads. And they're usually seem to be gold colored, which would make me think why these people would wear these kind of crowns on top of their head to symbolize the same thing. They don't have the gold halo crowns. They have these gold manufactured crowns of real gold. Yeah, these people are faking it. These people are telling you they're kings by putting on these gold crowns. Why these people like Mary Magdalene and Jesus are your real kings, your real queens, the real people who have really attained and deserve to be royalty. They are the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the Queen of Queens, whatever. These people have reached enlightenment. They've earned their royalty, not people who said, because we were born by these people and we have this status now because our brothers and sisters, our moms and dads. No, those are false. The kings and queens we're looking for are people who have gold halos that come around their head. They have crowns of life on top of their crown of their head. And again, all that stems from that third eye that is awakened. And we know for a fact now that when your pineal gland and your third eye is active, it glows inside of your head. So that glow literally, as it grows brighter, it comes out of the head and it surrounds the entire head. That's the crown, the gold crown halo that I'm looking for a real king. And that is not just Krishna or Jesus or Mary Magdalene or anybody in the past. It's literally you and it's me. Each one of us can attain enlightenment. It's not something that was only for certain people. Certainly there are people out there probably wanting to think that. But as each of us start to wake up and realize that there are no limits, that we can all wake up, we can all have crowns of lives, we can all evolve past opposable thumbs and, just the way things are all on this planet, education, politics, there's so much more to go. There are civilizations and planets out there that are far beyond what we think is possible, far beyond what we think is possible. And these civilizations are far beyond us politically, education, the way they're getting around on their planet. They're probably not using fossil fuels anymore, type 0 civilizations, and they're far beyond us. So yeah, this is you, this is me, this is all of us. This is evolution, spontaneous. We can all do this. It's not something that, one or two people can get to. I believe all of us can. And I think what they have shown us is when we look back at the past, at Krishna and Buddha and Christ, these are not names, but they're titles. The anointed one, the Messiah. And each one of us can be that too. And so let's go off a little bit here. I know this one's crazy a little bit, but every once in a while it's good to get crazy. And look at this picture. This is a drawing of Patty. Patty is the Sasquatch that was filmed in the Roger Patterson Gimlin film. Every Sasquatch that people say almost that they have seen, they draw pictures of, you see videos of, they have crowns on their head. They literally have these elongated skulls, much like gorillas do. And I think that's fascinating to know. These are hominids. These are a species that don't care about light beer, politics, most of our ideas. Certainly all of them know that humans exist. Why? Maybe 50% of us believe that Sasquatches or wild people exist. I believe these hominids are much more evolved than we are. And there are people say they see them burst into light, kind of transcend dimensions, and they seem to be, honestly, far beyond us. And another thing that people say that they see a lot of times is the red glowing eyes. And that seems to be something that we see a lot with them, eye shine, not from the camera, but literally almost like light protruding from their eyes when they're in cameras. And that can be seen. And I think that's something, as I read in the Bible, and it made me think of that one day. These things say the Son of God, he who has eyes like flame of a fire and his feet are like shining bronze. Wow. So it's saying that the Son of God has eyes like a flame. And even it says when he was come back, he'd have these flaming eyes. And I think that is pretty incredible to realize that Christ does have these flaming eyes. And this is a picture of what's called the skunk ape in Florida. He's got the eye shine, his eyes are shining, and he is definitely looks like he's shining his eyes a lot brighter than, a human would be if they were in the dark and lights were being shined on his eyes. I think this is because these people, humans, have actually, built up their fire, their water, their air, their earth in their body to a point where, their fire is burning in them enough to where they can actually see through the darkness without any kind of lights. Their third eye is awake. Their fire in themselves is awake, and they can see through.
I could take over if you want to.
Yeah, man, I'm almost there. So let's just keep going. And so Christ is the same thing. He said he's coming back on these eyes flaming, and we see that it's almost kind of like the Sith Lords in Star Wars. But, we kind of, again, this is kind of like in the culture, something that we see pretty regularly too, kind of hidden in plain sight. And so Christ, has this 40 days in the wilderness where I think when doing some studying and some real meditation, I think this is the process of when this happens. He fasts in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, so he's really, probably DMT'd up, right? So he's not eating, he's barely drinking anything, and he's in the wilderness and he's being tempted by the devil, and all these things are happening. To me, this is this huge process of enlightenment that's happening for him. Once this 40 days of wilderness is over, when he finally goes back to to society and starts really teaching and preaching the word to everyone. So, here we are in this point in our evolution where I feel like this picture is a great symbol of what's going on. And if you kind of really zoom into it, you can really tell that, a lot of it, seems to be what's really has gone on. And there's a spiral of timeline that's happening. But let's get to this point right here. The point where Christ, after Buddha and Christ has been crucified, we've gone through this really dark part of our evolution. And that is what it is. And it's helpful to who we are as humans and where we're going. And we've kind of got to this space now where we can destroy ourselves, or we completely go into a whole new way of living and doing things on this earth. And so I think that's important to know. You can go one way or you can go the other. And so now's the time for us to make that decision. Which way are we going to go as humans? So we know that there are dramatic changes happening on this planet right now. So can those dramatic climate changes throughout our solar system trigger spontaneous evolution? Is it possible that what's going on this planet today can actually, we actually can, trigger spontaneous evolution? And I believe so. What's happening on the sun, what's happening in our earth is incredible right now. In fact, in the past couple of days, we've had a couple of different news stations for the past day or two talk about the core inside the earth has literally stopped spinning. And so they expect now that core to start spinning the other way, but no one knows for sure what's going to happen. And as our fields are becoming, our magnetosphere is becoming much weaker, we're realizing that even these big, huge bursts of plasma that are coming, they don't even have to be, this doesn't have to be this huge burst coming. The bursts that are already coming, once the magnetosphere is down, are big enough to take down our satellites. They're big enough to change life on this planet and flip the poles over into something big. And that's really what's happening. The poles are already on the move. And that's really what's huge right now. It's not if they will flip. We're already in the middle of a reversal. Airports that were built to magnetic north are, 10 degrees off or so. Okay, we're back. So the power of editing. Thank you guys for staying with me. I'm a dad, so I got to take care of business sometimes. But let's get back to where we were. So I believe we're talking about magnetic reversal. So we are already in the midst of a magnetic reversal. Airports that were built 10 degrees are built to the magnetic North Pole are about 10 degrees off, or sometimes even more. So we know that the magnetic Earth, the magnetic North and South, they're moving, they're on the move. In fact, even they're creating huge holes in our atmosphere because we don't have this really big magnetosphere anymore. It's really dwindling. Everything's really dwindling. So the fact that in the past 2 days now, there's been a huge talk that they believe that the core has stopped spinning because of these, seismographs from earthquakes and everything, and something major is going on. Is just another indication that we are in the midst of a huge magnetic reversal of this planet, which could have huge implications for this planet and what's going to happen on it. I mean, I personally believe, and then we're going to beliefs, we're not going into fact, but after reading stuff like the Quran talking about the old lion turnaround, and they're talking about Earth, it makes sense that, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So if our planet was to flip, and we know these things happen, we know magnetic reversals happen, the sun itself flips every 11 years, the poles flip on the sun. And so we know ours is. We know the Earth has flipped, and we know it will flip again. But I believe that if the Earth magnetic north and south were to completely flip and shift, I do believe that equal and opposite reaction that we would have is, first of all, the magnetosphere of the Earth is going to be none. You know what I mean? It would probably be almost nothing. There'd be almost no protection. So being in the solar maximum, we really wouldn't have to have this huge solar burst. I mean, I do believe that that is part of this whole evolutionary process. I do, but it wouldn't even have to be that big with all the magnetosphere down. It'd have to be wouldn't even have to be the ones that we're hitting right now. The big ones that are hitting would be enough probably to take down all the satellites and the huge purification of this planet. So that's first. The other thing is, if we did have a flip, I do think it would cause the Earth to stop spinning the way it is. And that would create a point where it would at least stop for some time, where one side would be facing the sun and one side would be away from the sun. And I think the evidence to that is in Middle Eastern times. In the Middle East, we have these stories of these 3 days of darkness. And in America, in the Hopi tradition, they have a this talk about the long day that happened in the past that could happen in the future again. And so I think that's what makes sense to me, that if the Earth were to flip, the poles would flip, the Earth would stop. That one side would get a little sun for a little long, backside would be cold from the darkness, until it started to turn it back around and start to go the other way. And the magnetic flip would cause all kinds of crazy things to happen. At least we have to, assume that some big changes would happen from this. The crust could then therefore shift, and we believe that happens in places like Antarctica, could shift to somewhere in the equator. And many people believe that Antarctica was already a continent that's been somewhere else because of the Pare-Reese map. Obviously, they had for hundreds of years known what the landmass on Antarctica looks like without the ice on it. So it's very possible that once the ice melts on Antarctica, we're going to see some incredible pyramids, buildings and all kinds of structures on that continent, that because it's been a place that's been inhabitable for a long time, and only probably because of a pole shift out, shifted down to Antarctica. So if the poles flip, the Earth stops spinning, it starts to go the other way, and we have a completely different magnetic pole, north and south now. I think this has a huge effect on what people are terming the new Earth. It's a new age. It's the age of Aquarius. It's a new way of living on this planet that won't be completely different from what we've seen in the past. There are definitely civilizations and times where we've had incredible amounts of knowledge and wisdom and technologies upon us. But certainly this shift would have an incredible impact on humans, because we're the universe. We're the universe made whole, right? We are the universe experiencing itself. And so, of course, we're on this planet. This shift happens. The poles would flip in us. I believe that we would go from a brain polarization to more of a heart polarization. And not that one is better or worse than the other. They definitely have contrasts into growth of our evolution of who we are. So certainly one's not better than the other, but it would be a more heart-based polarity than it would be a thinking or a brain-based polarity, which I believe that we're in now. On that day where, these flares are being able to hit, the magnetosphere is down, the Earth has stopped spinning. I imagine this to be what's 0 point is. And 0 point is basically the toroidal field of energy, like an apple or an orange, that goes up, it's whole into itself. As it comes down, it comes into, the center, which is the 0 point, which is where we find the seeds, the apple seeds, the orange seeds, our heart, those kind of things. And I think it really starts to show us that this torus is not just a shape, but it's how this thing that the universe is putting out all over the place. Magnetospheres, human aura fields, like I said, fruits and vegetables, how stars move about in the galaxy. They go out and up and down and come back down to the center of the galaxy. They move in the same toroidal pattern. So I think we have these spirals of coming back and learning things over and over again into this 0 point that's really coming to the head. It's coming to a point, and this is going to affect us humongously to be in this kind of seed area, the seed point, this new life point, this new age, this new way of doing things point. It's going to be completely different. And it's going to have a major impact on us. And I think this is a point where literally anything is possible. So honestly, what we think about, we bring about. So if we think it's the end of the world, it's destruction, you might find yourself at the end of a tornado or an earthquake or some kind of being in a war with a bomb. Certainly, if you think it's a new world and it's a new way of living, then we have that opportunity to use that and use our imaginations to create maybe anything that we want and manifest anything. And this is a point where maybe it's so quickly, it's spontaneous, it's incredibly fast. And here's a verse from the Bible I tend to think is talking about this very time in history. Corinthians 1 says, "Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, in the twinkling of an eye, and the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised, imperishable, and we shall be changed." That, I think, is saying that we shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, super quick. Something incredible is about to happen. And that is very exciting to me. I believe that is something pretty profound that everyone in every culture, in every book seems to point toward some kind of fascinating, incredibly quick, spontaneous change that's among us. And so what I think is the way Darwin put it is saying that there's this survival of the fittest moment, that's how evolution works. I don't think that. I think it's who can adapt, who can change. And that love really is the higher vibrational frequency over fear. Love is a higher, more sporadic wave pattern than fear is. Thank you guys for being patient with me. I'm a dad and mom is doing a woman's healing session today. So we'll probably have to change the day. So we'll make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again. But let's get back to it. And I think that I was saying, let's hide this point down. That love really is this higher vibrational frequency. And when we look at somatics being played through salt or sugar or some kind of crystalline structure, and when those vibrations get higher, they seem to just morph into different, more complex shapes. And I believe that's what's happening. Our Schumann cavity resonance is getting higher, and it almost seems like things are speeding up. But it's not that, time is speeding up. It's like we're evolving quicker. We're learning things, and we're having those epiphanies and revelations and aha moments happen with, more frequency than before. What we're learning in a day is faster than what people thought maybe 2,000 years ago, what they learned in their whole lifetime. So all those past lives that are coming through, that are bleeding through to us now, we're really being experiencing them, and we feel really connected to more religions and more spiritual concepts and more understandings, and we're able to just take in more much quickly. So we are ourselves literally evolving faster. We are so much more different now as Homo sapiens than we were 2,000 years ago. And our DNA truly is turning on by living in these loving, grateful, patterns than we were living in fear, being upset, not having enough. We're really turning on these 90% of their DNA that they told us was junk, but certainly isn't junk. The universe doesn't create junk. It's really the good stuff. It's telepathy. It's, healing. It's, all these incredible things that are within us that we've just begun to scratch the surface of. And so we really can. We really can spontaneously evolve. We really can have dramatic changes in the twinkling of an eye, in the blink of an eye. It's totally possible. It's because we're not really these super physical beings as we think we're. We're 99.9% empty space, and our soul inside of us is the journeyer. You know what I mean? These bodies are just here for little, lives that we're going to live and experience and learn. But the soul is the journeyer that goes from life to life. And it's, as we've gone through millions of lives on this planet, we're starting to bring all that information, all that learning that we've experienced from lifetime to lifetime into this life. So certainly it seems like it's coming to a head. We're getting closer and closer to 0 point. Spontaneous evolution seems to be surely ahead of us. And it's not for everyone. Not everyone's there. Not everyone's going to make it in this journey. But I certainly think this is more so like a school. It's like a graduation. And we've spent, many levels, many lifetimes at certain levels learning certain spiritual practices and understanding to get to this point, to take all that stuff that we've learned all across the journey so far and use it for this lifetime, and knowing that in this moment that's coming upon us, that things can change drastically. We may be able to, pop out a bond of enlightenment on our head. There may even be individuals that are literally able to grow in stature as well, and bone density, to be completely large human beings. Some of the Egyptian texts and statues show that these 15, 20 foot tall, statues were humans that were of the fifth dimension, of these higher vibrational frequencies and understandings. I too believe that when we were created by the Anunnaki after their own image and their own likeness, they made us smaller than them. They made us, small in comparison. And that's why they had these huge gods, people who were 10, 11, 12 feet tall. And then when they inbred with us, we created these Nephilim that were even much bigger than that because they were hybrids. But we have that in us still. We have that Neanderthal DNA in us, that Cro-Magnon man, that Homo sapien species the Homo sapien species that we are. We still have that part in us. We still have that organic, naturally evolving human, and those who came from the stars to heaven. It's all in there, and we just have to lighten it up to access it, to maybe this one moment where we get to use all of it, and bam, completely evolve into something completely different than anybody's ever told us was possible. I think that moment is on us now. This is a crop circle with a butterfly, and I feel like it's just so representative of what really is going to happen. We are literally, morphing into completely different individuals, species on this planet that we've ever seen before. They'll be completely different from Cro-Magnon man, Neanderthals, Homo sapiens. We're going to create a whole new Homo luminous, who knows, but a completely different species that could literally do things beyond our wildest dreams and look completely different. Maybe not completely. Let's have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and that same Fibonacci fire ratio patterns that we see, but a different species that's ever been seen on this planet before. And it's not going to take a long time to evolve over millions of years into. I'm talking about one spontaneous moment where it all changes. We are all so much more powerful than we even know, than we've ever been told, and probably more than our wildest dreams. And there literally are people out there who do fear that moment when we figure this out and we realize it. And I think a group of us, many of us on this planet around the world, are starting to wake up and to realize our full potential, and that we really can go from these small, tiny little Homo sapien, fearful hominids into this incredible, great species that is just getting to know themselves and to really dig deep into who we really are. And so maybe the time is now to realize that the people of the past who had these elongated skulls, many of them probably were aliens. However, there definitely have been, I believe, different Christs and Buddhas and Krishnas who have reached a state of enlightenment where they earned their elongated skull, where they earned their crown, where they earned their halo in maybe a 40-day period in the wilderness, which now is more like a microcosm to the macrocosm of this event where many people can experience a very similar situation or experience that these Buddhas and Krishnas experience in their journey into the wilderness. We are going to have a collective moment, similar to what many Christians call the rapture. The rapture means to be caught up. And I do believe we'll be caught up in a higher dimensional frequency, and not similar in the way that, Christ would be on the cloud picking people up. I don't think that, but I do think we'll be caught up into a higher dimensional frequency. And we will see probably many different humans on this planet who will be walking around, and we probably won't have to wear any more pointy hats and things to cover it up. It will just be something that is normal to us, that are brothers and sisters, and that there are just people who are a little bit farther beyond the rest of us, and they have elongated skulls because they have more brain capacity and more intelligence than the normal person does. And that's because we're coming to that age. We're coming to a new age of Aquarius, a golden age, a time that has been prophesied as 1,000 years of peace, a time of great technology to be brought back that has been on this earth before, but never gone forever, but promised to come back again. So I think that is what is upon us. Spontaneous evolution, the changing of politics, education, the whole way of life on this planet is I believe, in the midst of a huge revolution. And so tonight, guys, I'm very optimistic and incredibly happy and grateful to know that I have incarnated on this earth at this time to be able to use all the skills, all the learning, all the evolution that I've gained so far in this moment, in this life, to hopefully spontaneously evolve into the being that I really truly am. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight for another mystery school on spontaneous evolution. I'm incredibly thankful for every single one of you, and grateful just to be able to have this experience. Thank you for Mike and the Ascension Works TV for having me live stream, and I hope you guys have a good night. Thank you.